This is Bill St. Cyr calling in from northern Maine, people of the dream. And this is my buddy, handing it over to
Darren,
you.
Darren Jakubec in northern British Columbia, Canada, and yeah, with our get together on theme of darkness part two, talking about dreams and inner journeys, and I loved part one, and I particularly wanted to follow up on how being with difficult things in this world is important. And there was a Bill quote that I liked. People tend to associate darkness with bad, and one of my themes I've noticed, being both a medical doctor and a person that does dream work or has clients and works with their dreams, just like you do, Bill, is people associate difficulty, emotional difficulty, difficult dreams, difficult life situations, challenging situations with bad. And some people associate that with even evil, and avoid difficulty, avoid difficult dreams, avoid difficulties in their life, and how that's a mistake. And I've got some fun quotes and lyrics and follow up and questions from our last podcast that I wanted to go forward with, since I'm very passionate about this.
Right.
There's my short summary.
Well, I think, so what I would say is that it's a mistake in the context of how we talk about it. So I think for a lot of people, they don't understand, right, that you can be with some of those difficult situations in a different way than they originally experienced them. So I think a lot of times the reason people make that mistake is because their original experience of the feeling is, one, they're very isolated. So like a lot of times if you have to face it on your own, it's not so good. It is, in that case, it can be a mistake. Also, like the feelings can be so overwhelming that like it can be problematic, right? But if you do it with support and you do it with some consciousness around like, oh, we're not here to re-traumatize ourselves. We're not here to wallow in our suffering. We're not here to be victims. We're actually here just to like acknowledge, like, are there places, like you were saying, that we're avoiding because of the way that we experience them, that actually then block us from the fullness of life?
Yes.
So, you know, and so, and dreams really like have a tendency to bring those things that we think of as dark places. We think of as places, well, and it's not, again, it's not just that we think of them as dark places. They're usually maybe were very dark when we experienced them in the first place. They were dangerous. They might have even felt evil or overwhelming or terrible in some way that's like legit. It's just that like what we've learned working with dreams is that you can actually be with them in this whole different way that actually keeps them from running you in the background unconsciously. And it's not like avoid that, avoid that, avoid that. And people don't realize when they avoid these things, a lot of times I'll talk to people about their heart and people will think, well, I can shut down that part of my heart. And the heart's a very simple valve in this way, because when you shut down the flow of that part of the heart, you shut down the whole heart. So if you shut down 50% of the energy over there, it doesn't just affect that, it affects everything. So that's my take. That's my riff.
And it's a way of saying, you can't have light without darkness. You can't, like, you need both sides of things. And the whole evil thing, I mean, that's a whole topic on its own that people don't like to talk about. And it's, well, and why would you, in a way? But there was a Laura quote. I've collected quotes as we go along here,
Yeah.
that your goodness, where is my Laura quote here? She's people who see darkness as evil have never really seen evil, or have never really experienced it in their life. And that might not be entirely true, but you're there's some really horrible behaviors out there that people have done, and that some people have experienced, or many people have experienced in some way. And to deal with them alone can be hard, and but to not talk about them at all is very isolating and gives those things extra power. And there can be traditional therapy, or one of the reasons you and I do this is we found dreams are this incredibly powerful modality, similar to psychedelics in some circumstances, similar to other forms of intense therapies. But you and I found particular power in dreams and how they bring up
Yeah.
subject matter and the ability for people to talk about it if they're willing. And that can open up the other side of the heart, to use your analogy, and lead to a more fulfilling life. And we've seen it over and over, which is part of the reason we're getting together and doing this and talking about it, because we've seen such profound change in our own lives, let alone the clients that we work with. And dealing with um, a lot of the subject matter is very difficult and emotionally difficult. There's very few dreams that um, things are just happy and going cruisingly well. Like they occur, but
Yeah,
there's often some emotional difficulty talking about them. Wouldn't you agree?
for sure. For sure. I mean, I think particularly when people first start, like often people will come in with a dream that's kind of shaking them up. So they're often dreams that have like difficult emotional content. That's why they remember them, right? I think sometimes it's even harder to remember like the dreams that are like, I'm just going to the coffee shop, or like whatever those dreams are where you just kind of, it's like your outer world life. It's can be a little bit harder to remember. We have a tendency to remember the dreams that are like, well, what just happened? Or what was that, that come sort of feel like they come out of the blue. I mean, I think the challenge around the word evil is it becomes very moralistic. It kind of like mystifies something that I'm not so sure at this point in my life is so mystical anymore. I think when people refer to evil, often what they're talking about is abusive situations that happen that legitimately feel evil. I don't disagree that they feel evil or seem evil, but I think it's really like, rather than making it a moral thing, I think a lot of times it's better to talk about it in terms of like the amount of abuse that people have been through or the amount of abuse there is in society. And can we, learn to be with that and learn to set boundaries around it and without having to like do this kind of thing, which is, if that works for you, great. But I think as a doctor and as a dream worker, like my own understanding is like there's reasons that like things happen to people and we can tease apart what actually happened. I mean, the other problem with evil is that then people tend to start to internalize it as like there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
Like I experienced this abuse because there's something wrong with me. Like maybe we're going to make that person evil, but then the flip side of that is then people who have been abused or experienced abuse tend to like also blame themselves. So the morality issue plays both ways versus just being with the actual abuse that happens in the culture and how do we all learn to deal with those kinds of experiences individually where it happens or as a community or as families or whatever. And kind of I think dreams actually show us ways that we can learn to set boundaries and change those patterns and change those lineages and work with it all in a different way. And it's not something mystical, even though dreams can feel sometimes,
Yes.
I guess they're mystical on the level of like, we don't fully understand them, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn and become conscious of all of that as opposed to creating categories of evil or even enlightenment. I'm not a super fan. No offense to anyone who believes in that, but I think it's really more about learning to open our hearts, and be present. And if you want to call that a enlightenment, that's awesome.
That's or light. I mean,
Or light.
a lot of these things I like to tell people, don't believe in anything. Either know or not know. And
Yeah, I like
yeah,
that. I
Take
like
what you
that.
can. People say, "Well, do you believe in God?" It's like, well, I prefer not to think of it that way. It's I've got my I've got my inner knowing, and that's for me, and yours can be for you, and we can talk about that in that context. But it almost feels like it's I don't want people to believe what we're saying. Either you kind of agree or disagree, or um, there is the darkness and light. Can I go to a quote, Bill? I was
Absolutely.
reading
We
last
had a
time I
couple
was
of questions too.
but yeah, we got a bunch of questions. And then I've got some fun dark light things, but we were taught there was a Madeline L'Engle quote from A Wrinkle in Time too. There's another one on darkness and light because just
Mhm.
we questioned, is darkness a thing? Is light a thing? And are these just words? And like, what does it mean? And she said, one of from Meg from A Wrinkle in Time. For a moment too, she felt that the word darkness and light had no meaning, and only this melody was real. And in the book, she was hearing beautiful music. And when you
Yep.
hear beautiful music, everything else becomes irrelevant. And even the words dark and light, they become irrelevant. Like, what are we even talking about? It's helpful to go to say is the whole evil thing is we've touched on that topic and what is that? And I've had dreams before we get to questions. I've had dreams of what I would best call demons when I describe them, gnashing teeth, lipstick looking, and I've had
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
devil. It's like, you're got to be kidding me, and not just my dreams, other people's dreams, and
Yeah.
there's always a lightness afterwards. I like to celebrate that. It's you've seen something associated with a behavior that no longer serves you, and you can use that language. But and some of my clients have had devils in their dream or what seems like the devil, and there's a deal to be made, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me. This dream sounds
Deal with the
profound.
devil.
And right, what is that within you? And I had an interesting conversation with my colleague Graham Bergstra, who's another doctor who who's been very gone down the rabbit hole of learning internal family systems. And one of the internal family systems is one of the books is no bad parts. It's like, well, isn't that Graham? Isn't that potentially a bad part? Isn't that you find something that looks like a devil or a demon in your dream? Those are doesn't that? And he said, well, and here's his quote. He says, "In the IFS world, the term is unattached burdens." Um, is so as you go into yourself, you find these parts that are actually not parts of you,
Right.
and so it's not that we can like there's this potential idealistic part that all of these parts can serve you well, and it's just like you're right on this edge of, you know what, this part just seems not part of me. And they say if you approach it, says if you approach that part firmly with compassionate and compassionately ask it to leave, it will generally do so. So you don't want it to be part of you. But these things are difficult to talk about. Like, who wants to say like death dreams, sex dreams, dreams where there's demons or a devil? Like, who? Nobody wants to talk about those. But once you release them and you try not to give those things power, it's amazing the lightness people can feel and the relief on the other side of that. And they take that into their world. They have a happier day, the next month. Like once they've released that and once they see a pattern, and it's like, like they may get this chest pain of like, oh my God, there's something associated with that dream that I do. But afterwards, they get this incredible relief. Um, would you agree? Has that been your experience?
I would. I mean, the only thing I would add, or also there's something, and I think this lines up with the IFS, right? Or there's something that they've learned along the way, like, or there's something they've experienced that feels evil or demonic or so horrible that it comes in the dream. So it's either, there's the way that those internalized beliefs play out in us. But I guess for me, I feel like we're not born with those things, right? So they play out in us. That's why I like a lot of the IFS, including what your friend just said. The idea that it's what did he call it? A attached
Unattached burden.
An unattached
Unattached.
bird.
And for those who don't
Unattached.
know what
It's
internal
sort of
family
attached to
systems,
the person, probably, but
yes, yes,
yeah, but it's unattached in the sense that it's not literally a part of who you are. It's some. I think of it as something that we've internalized. So I think we do internalize a lot of beliefs that are again are based on a kind of a culture that can be very abusive at times. And
yes,
so I really link like the kind of demonic energies that people experience in dreams with abusiveness, because I don't think of it as like, I don't think of it as something we're born with. I think it's something that like people experience really terrible things. And it plays out in our dreams in ways that, obviously feel very dark because as a culture, we don't talk about them. We keep it all in the dark. We keep
yes.
abuse, we keep experiences like that, even things that aren't abusive, really, like, you know, people who have mental illnesses, for example, they just, it's not okay to talk about that stuff, right? Like, we keep it in the dark. We keep people's struggles. We keep our own struggles as if we're all not struggling. Like, there's this whole, like, world built around the idea that we're all not struggling when most of us are struggling at least a little bit, right? Like maybe not every day, but it's
Oh
a
yeah.
challenge.
Just ask anybody with depression, just to go with the darkness theme, if they think darkness is real. It's like the, they'll generally have a lot to say about that. Um, yeah, we're struggling. That was another Bill quote I liked from the last one. Is it's not going to change unless we learn to be with challenging things in our life and dealing with confronting these things in any way that seems possible to you, even just sharing them, uh,
Yeah, with love,
leads
breaking
to
the
growth.
isolation.
Yes. And there's, before we get to questions, too, quotes I like. There's these great books with quotes, and I've got apprehension here because I've had a whole bunch of Christian influences in my life and some people who have more aggressively tried to push the Christian religion on me. But there's some fabulous quotes in the Bible, and I'd like to give a couple that pertain to this, if that's okay. Like
It's okay with me.
I love the Gospel of.
It is Easter.
It is Easter. Yes, this podcast is we're
We are
recording this on
recording on the Easter
So
holiday.
there's two quotes from the Gospel of Thomas in particular that I like. I like the one, if you bring forth what is within you, you will bring what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And it's hard not to work with dreams and think of, it's like stuff is coming forth. It's and if you don't bring it forth, it can eat away at you. So that quote in particular, as somebody who works with dreams, has really, really resonated with me, and what has saved me personally, and I've seen save other people, save their lifestyle, their jobs, their marriages, their addictions. The other quote that I really like, pertaining more to the dark and the light, saying too from the Gospel of Thomas, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over all. And I've seen different versions of that quote. It's like a different translation of that included the word dark and light. It's like once he sees just how dark it is, he will be astounded by how bright the light is. It's bringing the
Yep.
both sides to it, and well, it is Jesus, so you gotta give credit to a very good source there. There and on a lighter theme, one of my favorite. Can I do another quote, Bill? Is that okay?
Sure.
The lighter quote, it's a longer one. It's actually a song, which is fun. And my son Joseph was in the Addams Family musical a few years back, and I love the soundtrack. And there's one song called "Move Towards the Darkness," and I mean, they make light of the whole dark thing in the Addams Family. The lyric is, move toward the darkness, welcome the unknown, face your blackest demons, find your weakest bone, lose your inhibitions, love what once was vile, move towards the darkness and smile. And then it goes on to say, don't avoid despair, only at our weakest can we learn what's fair. When you face your nightmares, then you'll know what's real. Move towards the darkness and feel. Move towards the darkness, conquering your pain. Let each foreign forest offer you its rain. Only at our lowest can we rise above. Move towards the darkness and love. And that's
It's very sweet.
Andrew
That's
Lippa
very
is the
sweet. That's
lighthearted
very
Lippa.
sweet.
It is very sweet. It's this, the same theme of, and they do it in such a lighthearted way. I mean, at the end of that song, they've got this great scene where the main characters, he says to his wife, I think it's Gomez, says, "Are you unhappy, darling?" And Morticia says, "Oh yes, completely." Just to bring lightness to the whole thing, which, but it's a wonderful message, and you kind of get that when you see the play, or um, that there is light in the darkness. So a lighthearted one and a Christian one. Thoughts, Bill? You must have thoughts.
I mean, I like what you're saying. I like the idea of like we give a certain amount of power to the darkness by being so scared of it. Like, so having humor around it, for example, and I say that with tenderness for what people have been through. Like, I understand why it's so scary, but I also think there's like a certain kind of a power struggle going on, and I think a lot of the power that this kind of unconscious material has to do with the fact that it's unconscious. The more you realize, like, oh, I'm not the only one struggling. I can share my struggle. I can share whatever pain or grief I'm going through. I can share my pain, or I can even share anger in a healthy way without being destructive. I can share love. I think the more that there's space for that, then it all just becomes a little bit easier. Like you and I met at a retreat where people were sharing about the dreams, and so you get to see what other people are going through, and it was so liberating to be like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels like I'm crazy, or I'm not the only one who feels dark and depressed sometimes, or I'm not and there's something about just acknowledging that lifts a lot of the power of that darkness. It's just be like, yeah, we all have darkness. And if we would, have enough love and light to like shine a little bit of light on that darkness, then we could find our way through it. It's not always easy. I don't say that like some fairy tale necessarily, but it's not always easy, but I think it's doable. I think we have the power when we're with each other with love and with ourselves with love to be able to, like the quote about bringing what's inside forth. Like, I think we can bring what's inside forth, and I think it will liberate us and astonish us. But that takes a lot of practice, I think, and encouragement, and other folks to be like, you go, man, you go, you go, girl.
Yes. Always leads me to a question. So
Okay, let's
is
do
that
the
okay with me?
questions. Yeah, please. I love questions.
Um, Kevin Zhao, ear, nose, throat surgeon, gives me a question. He says, I'm not sure if it's relevant to the podcast or darkness part two, but my question would be, how does one how does one continue showing up ready to be vulnerable and courageous to keep going through with each wave? How does one continue showing up ready to be vulnerable and courageous to keep on going through with each wave?
So relevant. I mean, you want me to start or do you want to
Yeah,
start?
please. You start.
I mean, I think obviously, like I just said, one, it helps if we're not going through it all alone. So I think that's often rule number one for me is like it helps. It helps if we have friends, partners, guides, mentors to kind of like encourage us to keep going. Because a lot of times we'll grow and we'll hit an edge we'll hit that edge and we'll feel like that new edge negates all the growth that we've experienced, as opposed to like what you learn when you're in this practice is like, yeah, you hit an edge, and yeah, it's you push through that edge to the next. It doesn't all happen at once, you know. It really, for me, it's really a lifetime practice. So that's the other part of it, is like really having the understanding that we're not looking for like some moment of, I'm not looking anymore for some moment of liberation. I'm looking to live in a way. I'm wo- I'm looking to live with love and as a practice, including being loving toward those places that are challenging. So when the wave comes, it's like, and again, I don't say this lightly. It's like, yeah, another wave. Here we go. It's like being at the ocean, right? Like you don't just deal with one wave, you know, it's wave after wave. And I don't mean that to be depressive. I just mean like that's life, you know, like eh, we have this thing where this is where the dark and light thing I think gets tricky, is like people tend to think of the darkness as being so dark, and I'm gonna like save myself from the darkness and I'm gonna be in the light and then it's all over. And life doesn't really work that way. Because
No, it doesn't.
yeah, the older you get, the more you realize, like, you know, and you can get cynical about that. So that's one thing that happens to a lot of people, is they feel like, oh, I did all this work and I'm sort of like, I'm still struggling, you know, and I look like I've done all this work and I'm still on the path. And yeah, it is still sometimes a struggle. Sue and I just did this huge trip and ran into all this couple stuff as we were traveling, because we have enormously different travel styles. And it was hell. It was hell. Some of it was hell. But it's like, so be it. Like it's not really hell in the senses I grew up with. It's just painful, you know, like you're trying to do something with someone you love and you're hitting a wall and it hurts and I don't want to hurt them, and I'm angry and I don't want, you know, like it, who knows how to do all of this? Like it's really like it's a lifetime practice, and it's okay to like learn it all a step at a time, and it's okay to do like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 3 steps forward and 1 step back. Like it's not, I think we're trying to do something that like none of us were really taught how to do. I mean, God bless my parents. Like I loved my parents. I had great parents. I got a good deal in the parent, you know, card game, you know. I got dealt a good hand, but they didn't know. They kept their life very, very simple. They didn't, you know, they just followed the church's rules. They didn't deal with this emotional stuff, and they let it all be. And so I'm out here with Sue and we're trying to do stuff in a different way, and it's a process. I think it's a lifelong process. And I think it's a good process. That's
Good
my
answer.
take on it. Good answer.
Um, my
How about
answer?
you? Yeah.
So how do you keep showing up? Um, I think a lot of the spiritual text, I found the Buddhist text language particularly helpful and simplistic. Like there's journey, not destination sort of things, Zen
Yep.
Buddhism, and a lot of the
Love that.
phraseology. So knowing that phraseology from spiritual traditions, whatever that is for you, the Buddhist, Christian and Buddhist, I'm more familiar with, but the Buddhist one really dumbs it down to the most simplistic to me sometimes, where I can understand, and that there's a choice in each moment that we live to face the next wave. And the two things that, if I was just to bluntly answer the question, not being alone and having humor are the, are the two practical little things that help me face the next wave. And I literally just got a text from my friend Laura, who's known depression, who's known trauma, and she's like waving at you from across the battlefield. It's our kind of, it's our way of, it's right. And I just say waving back, and I know she's going to smile when I wave back. It's like, yeah, today might feel like a bit more of a battlefield. It's like the waves coming in, but we use a little bit of humor and we're not alone. And that's it. So there's a bit of humor there and there's a bit of not alone there. So it checks those two boxes. And you and I doing this together helps. Having talking to Kevin, even when I say he's a surgeon. Well, that's his job. He also meditates. He's also far more than a surgeon. It's like seeing
Yep.
somebody who for who they really are, getting somebody to know them other than their occupation, and having that connection beyond the occupation helps me face the next wave. So I just had to tell somebody, and how much of this do you do alone? How much of this do you tell somebody? I don't know, a fair amount. I feel the need to share it with at least somebody, and if some of it's incredibly private, in a therapist or therapist equivalent sort of setting, and even that stuff, to the extent you're willing to share, helps me face the next waves. And anybody that's in traditional therapy would likely largely agree that that ability to share it, it just, what's the quote? Pain shared is pain divided. It's like,
Yep.
it's just less when you share it. Um, but and he used the word courage. It just takes courage. Do you want a better life? Do you want a better marriage? Do you want to be a better parent? Do you want a more fulfilling day? And if you don't, well, that's your choice. But I often do. I want to have the best day possible. The beauty of, or one of the beauties of being a medical doctor, um, is you see a lot of pain and suffering and death, and you leave my emergency room shifts thinking life is precious. Like, that person has a cancer that's going to kill them pretty quickly, or that person, you just have you can choose to have that gratitude. And at my best, I can choose to have that gratitude and think, how is my tomorrow going to be even more rewarding than today? And I have that choice to make it so. And that helps me show up to say, okay, there there's a song by Joseph Arthur, "In the Sun," it's called, and it's still, the quote sticks with me. "If I find my way, how much will I find?" That there's even more lightness, there's even more joy, there's even more enjoyment to life if I look for it, because emergency room's not an easy place to be a lot of the time. A lot of I'm a family doctor that has extra training in emergency room and anesthesia, and the procedures people have to do, the emergency situations, they're not, a lot of them aren't fun. Like, they can be rewarding, but it's, to find the joy in the situation, to find it's often y it's difficult to say, where is this rewarding and where is this, you have to, it's a bit of a fight sometimes to say, "Okay, this is why we do this."
Yep.
Yeah.
So can I
Yeah,
I love
please.
this conversation. This is kind of bringing up a couple other things for me. So based on what we've been talking about, add a couple of things. And I think this is part of speaking to someone is like breaking shame around it. So shame's an issue here too. I think when you hit every time you hit a wave, a lot of times people will feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me that I'm hitting another wave. It's almost like the way the question's set up, there's almost an implication for all of us is like, oh, another wave, oh, another wave. And there's almost like there's this shame. And so like part of it's also like it's just so one, breaking the isolation around it, sharing it like you're talking about it breaks the shame. Also, just knowing that, like, yeah, it's a lifelong practice. Like, you can be 30 or 64 or whatever your age is, and you can still be learning how to do this, and there's no shame in that. And also, I think just having people in your life that are like reminding us that like there is another way to live. We can actually go through these waves and it's worth it to go through these waves, and you can actually live with more love. You don't have to settle for like like what I used to joke was always my worst nightmare was like everybody walking around being like, how you doing? Fine, thank you. How are you doing? Fine, thank you. How you do? And nobody's fine, like, but I think people settle for that kind of life because partly they don't know that there's something else that's possible, and it
Mhm.
is scary to, like, risk the safety of, like, "I'm fine. I'm not great, but I'm fine, and I'll settle for fine because I don't know that there's something beyond that." And I think that's another thing that I really love about dreams. So, along with the really hard things, they'll often show us things. They'll show us possibilities for love. They'll show us there'll be characters that come. We're talking about demons. We were talking earlier about not being too dark. There's also like very loving characters. Like this very sensual, loving, beautiful dreams that people have that they're also ashamed of, right? It's like, oh my God, the sex in my dream, or there's something sexual in my dream, or not. Or there's also just like lots of dreams where there's like beautiful children or beautiful places or lots
Or
of
angels.
light or angels or beauty or whatever.
Uh-huh.
All of those things are also ways that dreams can remind us of like this isn't the only reality. The reality that we've experienced isn't necessarily all of reality. I made a couple notes. I was just looking down to see, did I get all my notes? Yeah. Yeah, those were the few things I wanted to add to kind of like keep that part of the conversation going.
Man, I like what you said. So for, anybody who's watching or listening to this, if you haven't grasped like what you just said, that there's more than one reality, you can use the word dimensions, you can use the word, once you've worked with dreams, or those that have done a psychedelic trip or had a near death experience, or those, you get the sense that, wait a second, there's more to this reality. And as somebody who's scientifically trained, one tries to explain that. We did a podcast on language, and I still struggle. Like everything we talk about, how do I bring it into scientific language? And oftentimes, I have trouble just tangible examples and case studies of how things have improved as a result. Which is hard. Science doesn't tend to work that way, so it's not so friendly to narrative medicine, to qualitative results, what we call it, where you can't just say, X is X is X. That there's more than one thing going on in your world. There's not just this three dimension in your experience of today. There's also what might be called an emotional or a feeling or a spiritual dimension that defies words, that you're living. And once one opens these doors, which will show up in a dream as open doors, for example, and you
Yeah.
opening a door
Good
or lock.
example. Good example.
Good example, which leads me to another question, if I, because it's kind of, we're starting to
Yeah.
answer a question, if I can. There's um, Megan, who was working as a dental assistant in the operating room, and she said, "Could you give examples of," so paraphrasing her, like what the images are pointing towards in dreams, or outer life examples? And part of it, I can and I can't, Megan. Like we sprinkle them throughout our podcast here, but I'm gonna, like we said, door. So she said it would help her grasp the podcast a bit more if every now and then we would say, "What does this mean?" And I know you had a great quote at the beginning. We intentionally don't do this much because the dream is for the person and it's so highly personal. But we've talked, we've gone back and forth on this before. But having said that, a door is a door, and if you just got your finger slammed in a door, but a door tends to be an opening to another possibility. And oftentimes with people that have got many locks on a door in a dream, they'll immediately tell you they they know there's things behind the door that they don't want to see. Like they
Yeah.
know it's their dream. They know. So there's there's two and infinite answers to any question. There's like, what is that door for you? And sure, there's possibility. And if I did say to Megan, like I'd mentioned a plane crash dream personally in one of my prior things of how plane crash, and like just to go through the 20 possible things. What was the feeling? Well, the feeling was fear. What is a plane? Well, it's being, it can be being ungrounded, it can be being freedom if you're flying it. Mine were many military things. Is there something military? um, Sigmund Freud would have said, well, it's penis shaped, how's your sex life? And well, the plane crash, well, my sex life wasn't good at the time. I was living in a plane crash, metaphorically. My relationships weren't good. So Freud would have been right. Uh, what else is a plane? It's not on this earth in a way. If you're in a plane, it's hard to be living a grounded day to day life. And a crash, just in general, people, it's, can I acknowledge there's part of my life that's crashing or that has crashed and that I'm still living that energetically? It's hard to show up present in my day, compassionate to my family, my patients that I work with, myself, if I'm having plane crash dreams. It's like there's a crash energy that's living in me, and to acknowledge that helped me get through that. So you can go through the details and the nuances, and it's amazing. You'll find individual details in dreams that are incredibly precisely relevant to you and your past. And you can find a whole bunch of them. Or in a room working with the retreat, one of the things I wanted to say, we've both facilitated retreats, you far more than I, and one of the things I wanted to say, okay, this person's going to tell a dream, and these other 10 or 12 people in the room, you're immediately going to see meanings to that dream. And what's scary is, on some level, you'll probably be right. And you may or may not be, but please don't say it, because you may be wrong on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, or very much projecting your own issues. So please try and pull it in, because which is what you and I both feel. One of the worst things you can be is right. It's like, and then you can use that to against a person, or they could bring up shame because but trickle through the podcast to answer Megan, I'll try and bring up, I think I'll try and be more conscious of bringing up the possibilities of what a door might mean. And we'll always throw in that addendum, but it's individual for the person.
Well, I mean, I think there's two other things we can do. One, we can just bring our own dream examples and say
Yeah.
what it is for us, so that then the personal thing doesn't have to be like it's just like, well, I had this dream and this is, so like I had a dream the other day where I was like going up this really snowy hill, and, you know, it was so what's my own experience? So this is the other part, is like you can also feel into like what's my own experience in association with that place in the dream. So there's two things we can do. We can give examples. We can do generalities to a certain extent, but like I'm like, no, not generalities. But we can do some of that. Like I think it's fine if nothing else, as a stimulus to think about things. I think it's fine to do that. I don't think we have to be like have some sort of law against generalities. Like we can use generalities where they're helpful, and then people own them or don't own them. It resonates. The word I always use is like, does it resonate for you or not resonate for you? It doesn't resonate for you, then ignore the generality. So if we're talking about water being about spirit or feeling or whatever, like, and we give those examples, just feel into like, well, does that resonate for me? You're someone that's like has a sibling that drowned. That might not resonate for you. What might resonate for you is water might be something that has traumatic meaning for you. But you can take the time with your own dreams. I think this is the other thing we can do, is we can talk a little bit like how to be with those things, and also how to play around with it. So I mentioned this dream in a class where I was like, I'm on some sort of snowmobile type contraption. I can't even quite see it. I have no memory of exactly what it is. And I remember but it took effort to get it up the hill. So it's clearly not just gas powered. And I get up this snowy hill, and one of the people just asked, well, what would it be like to not, I was like sort of feeling into like, it took a lot of energy and determination. And that's what was resonating for me in that moment. And someone in the class was like, well, what would it be like to not work so hard? So this is the other thing. It's like you're also allowed to play around with like, in what is happening in your life. In other words, if I'm in this very driven place in my life and I have a dream where I'm like, struggling up this snowy hill, I think it's a really good question to ask, like, well, what would happen if you didn't struggle up the hill? And what is that struggle for you? And if you're at a time in your life where like having that kind of assertiveness and feeling that kind of power is something that's new for you, I think you can also like work with it that way. You can feel into like, what's happening in my life, and how do I be with my dream in a way that actually has meaning to me in my life? So, you mentioned the doorway dream. Like, if there's things behind that door that are like memories or again, trauma or abusive things, that's a very different doorway than like it's a doorway to heaven, to quote whatever song that was, doorway to heaven. Like there's different kinds of doorways also. And it's like, well, why do if you have a door with all these locks on the door, each of those locks in a way means something for you.
Yeah.
Like if there's 8 locks on that door, then that's probably not a coincidence. Like each of those locks are probably like, oh, there's probably 8 different places in my life where I lock something away. And what does it mean for me to unlock that? Am I unlocking some power? Am I unlocking creativity? Or am I looking at something that like I haven't, had the support to look at my whole life? Is there some kind of abuse or trauma that's happened or something terrible secret in my family or whatever? And I think we can also teach people of like a process of how to be with different things in a dream that hopefully would also be meaningful.
Yes. And when I agree, it's amazing how many people are given keys or keys shortly after those dreams. So one of the processes or what we'll do, it's nice to have at least 3 dreams. You don't have to. You can work with one, but sometimes you'll to use your struggle dream, there'll be 3 dreams where you're struggling. Or people say, "Well, that's just a soap opera dream," or "That was just a work dream." But the feeling in the dream crosses over. There's maybe 3 dreams, 5 dreams, then there might be the feeling is frustration or the feeling is struggle. One of the best questions for a dream is that's my top 3 questions are, what's the feeling? Is that familiar? And is there any reason you might need to feel that in your life? And those may or may not work in many scenarios, but they're often a place to start. And it's like, what's the feeling is often just the best question. And yeah, we can give more tips of what we do as we go along here for sure.
I think if we bring examples, I mean, I don't know
Yes.
whether Megan would be willing to give us an example, maybe not, which is fine if she's not, but also like we can bring in dream examples and talk about like the kinds of questions that we would ask and offer
Yes.
possibilities like, oh, I have certain ideas in my head when I read a dream. Like, I try not to be attached to those ideas. But, like you're saying, like with a doorway, if someone has a doorway, I'm immediately like, what's on the other side of the doorway? If there's 8 locks on the doorway, I'm immediately like, well, why are there so many locks on the doorway? Like what got locked away? That seems like a question. That doesn't seem like a coincidence.
Yes. I agree. And it is profound that people can often come up with 8 things. Like it can be incredibly profound. Yeah, people know. It's you just have to ask the question.
It's there in our psyche somewhere.
It's all in there. Um, one of the things related to Haley asked me, says, "Can you use more quotes?" She did like the quotes when we went through. It's, uh, it's helpful. I read The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley. Oh my goodness, it's a good book. It's a slog, but I swear like 50% of the book is quotes. And like once you really, it's about enlightenment, finding yourself and what is true in the world. And like it's all been said before in a way. So the quotes are really powerful. It's a heavy, heavy book. What's Speaking of quotes, let me see if I have another quote here. Um, the best place for darkness to hide is behind the lamplight of truth. Another one, Carl Jung. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Talk about dark light, shadow. Just see that side. Um, it just made me think of The Sounds of Silence. Hello, Darkness, my old friend, too. That um,
Yeah.
it's it's in it's in it's in a lot of music, or in Imagine Dragons too. There's that um, demons look into my eyes. It's where my demons hide. Don't get too close. It's dark inside. Just really, really resonates. So it's all over art and literature. these
Poetry,
topics,
music. Yeah, for sure.
poetry, music, for sure. I had a request for just more stories and how it relates to life, which I think I've struggled with while talking about dreams. People in my daily life, oh, why do you do this? Like, why do you work with dreams? It's because I have a better life at the end, and the people I work with have a better life. That seems to be lost in the shuffle sometimes. You can get lost in the details of the dream. It's like, wait a second, why exactly are you and Bill doing this? And why exactly do you work with dreams? So I tend to forget that, to say, well, because I have a better life because of doing it. And it's funny, I almost hesitate to say it, which leads to one of Marlowe sent me a question, kind of a reflection and a question. So I'm paraphrasing him. Do you think he's noticed a negativity bias? And he's a family physician and an emergency room physician and delivers babies. He's a bit of a super jack, Swiss Army knife of a doctor and a reflective man. And he says, do you,
Hey, Marlo.
says, is there, and do you think dreams reflect a negativity bias in people as well?
Hmm. Like because they tend to be dark, because it tends to be difficult material. Like, is there?
Yeah, or people will see, and I think it for me to answer that question, it kind of relates back to the initial comment I made. People will often see difficult things, emotionally difficult thing as dark, and sometimes even say it's evil. So there's negative's another term for that. That somehow this is bad, somehow this is negative, and let's not go there. And amazingly, I'm certainly guilty of it myself. Like, I don't know if it's the human condition sometimes, or being a middle predator on the scale of evolution, that things are never that good. You're always looking for the lion or the bear behind you, or the predator, and that even when things are good, people have a hard time celebrating that things have gotten better. Uh, I notice this certainly. I don't, just being Canadian, that the there's this cultural thing not to talk about success very much that seems to be different in different countries. I've noticed German people and people from the United States are much better talking about success and their wins, or their, and sometimes be it financial or material things. But is that a negativity bias? Is there because we don't want to talk about? Is it humility? Is it, but there's a part of that that's not healthy. I think it's good to celebrate our successes, and sometimes they happen to be financial, or sometimes they happen to be material. Um, but we, as a cultural society in Canada, a lot of the times don't talk about it. And I think it pervades to not talk about our successes across the board sometimes. What do you think, Bill?
Not sure I totally understand the question. Maybe I'm in a blind spot, but I mean, I think for me, dreams really like open and a tremendous opportunity for beauty and brilliance. Like my experience of dreams has not been a negativity bias. I think there's an enormous amount of unconscious material in the world. I think there's an enormous amount of unprocessed history and lineage. So I think that can be a little bit overwhelming, and it can feel like there's a never ending amount of darkness in dreams, which may or may not be true, but I don't think it matters. I don't think the darkness or the negativity matters, because I think the love trumps it all. I think the beauty and the brilliance trumps it all. So I don't know if I'm answering the question exactly or not, but what part of what dreams have taught me, and I won't say it's just dreams, but it's like working with people with their dreams, like getting to know people, like for me, evokes an enormous amount of love and compassion. When I hear the stories of when people actually begin to share what they've actually been through, I feel like we're wired as humans to like love and care and help to heal and help to nurture that love. And I experience that all the time. I experience that when I'm with you. I experience it when I'm doing dreams with other people. Like I said, Sue and I ran into some real brick walls on our trip. But overall, once we get underneath those walls, once we get underneath those places that feel so dark and negative and shameful, like all I feel is love and compassion. So I feel like the whole idea about darkness and negativity in our culture is like a setup, because the more that we give that negativity and darkness power, the more that it becomes self-fulfilling. And I don't think it's true. I think there's an enormous capacity for love within people. That are we scared of that? I think maybe, because the bigger we get, the more, again, we hit these edges, these memories come up, these places we were taught, like, oh my God, don't, whatever you do, don't be big, don't be beautiful. I was told over and over, don't be a faggot, don't have feelings, don't be a faggot, don't be like a girl, heaven forbid, don't this, don't that. We were talking earlier about, like, someone asked a question about gender and dreams. We're going to do a whole nother video on that. I think we're also terrified of our feelings. We're terrified of anger, we're terrified of fear, we're terrified of grief and pain, we're terrified of also of love. I don't think we need to be scared of it. And I say that with an enormous amount of tenderness for how scared we all are. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, we can learn not to be scared of it. We can learn to actually celebrate love. We can celebrate our feelings. We can celebrate the places with humor, with love, with tenderness. So I'm not sure I'm answering Marlo's
No,
question, but
I think you are, and you're right. It's not. I completely agree with you, Bill. And it's not. I mean, it wasn't a direct, easy question to answer, and it wasn't a direct, easy question in a way. But I think you're right. In this outer world, there's a lot of negativity or doom scrolling, as as it would. It's like, let's look at what's dark. Let's keep looking at that. But I couldn't agree with you more. Within dreams, or people who've done other modalities, be it a meditation, a
like,
psychedelic trip, or this or that, like, or a church or a traditional religion, like, you'll see light, you'll see the opposite. And dreams, it's incredible how many ways they'll it's the doors will be open, or the door will not be locked, as a metaphor, which means, you know what, you can open that door if you want, or people will have the keys. It's like, there's possibility there. This is actually not negative. This is, you actually have the keys. And it's far more common to see doors that aren't locked in dreams than doors that are locked. In my experience, it's that possibility is there, and that's love, and that's light, and that's many other things. I agree.
are we back? We flip. We're on different sides of the
Yes,
screen now.
yes.
Not sure what happened there. I did have really bad Wi-Fi problems earlier, so it's possible that my Wi-Fi just cut out. I also moved my computer. Maybe I glitched something, but anyway, we're back. We're
You went
back.
to the upside down, and you're back.
I was just thinking about those stories. That's the other thing. Like, are those stories negative? Like, is Stranger Things a negative story? Is The Lord of the Rings a negative story? Is Harry Potter a negative? Those are good examples of stories where, like, these long journeys that people need to go through to find the love.
Yes.
But, like, with Stranger Things, for example, one of the things I love about Stranger Things is just, like, the love all the way through. Just is this, there's just, like, this love that these kids have for each other, and that they share with each other, and they sometimes struggle with. But is it about the darkness, or is it about the love? Or is it that, like, really, in order to have the love, we also need to face the darkness?
Right. Which was the point of this episode, in a way. Right. Right.
What were you talking about DreamWork clients?
The You'd said, at our worst, it's like you would want a client to change, or have an agenda, or almost be
Right,
aggressively
right.
want them to
When I'm in
change at your
when I'm in
worst.
my control mode.
Right, right. So, but in me, I see people on drugs, in the emergency room, and people addicted to goodness knows what, people addicted to food, people addicted to social media, people, and I just want them to change, but it's difficult to change. And a lot of times, I think the message is not, certainly we see this as the medical profession. The message is not, you need to do what's difficult and change. Increasingly, that's seen as potentially inconvenient or uncomfortable. It's like you can't ask someone to change. We need to keep, at worst, enabling the drug abuse or this, and as opposed to go through the equivalent of detox for whatever it is. And there's this reluctance in some of our systems, certainly within Canada, to say we need to ask you to do what's hard here, what's difficult, what's going to be emotionally difficult, physically difficult. And withdrawal is physically difficult from alcohol or drugs. It's
Yep.
difficult.
Yep.
Detox is difficult. And people will say, well, I don't want to do that. Well, at what point are we enabling the system if we say, if you can use that example or a dream example in Stranger Things, all the kids did what was difficult. And in The Lord of the Rings, like all these stories where you leave the Shire, you're doing something difficult. And the reward comes with doing something difficult. And we can use the word dark, we can use the word, but yeah, to answer Kevin's question as well, it's like, it's kind of the way, is to do difficult things. Meditating, sitting there meditating for hours at a time is incredibly difficult for those who haven't tried it. It's emotionally difficult, physically difficult, right? And are you with me, Bill?
I'm with you, man.
Yeah. So what do you think? Close to wrap up time?
I think this is a pretty good place. We've been up an hour. We should probably say something about, we're going to post this. Well, if you're here, then you already know this. We're going to do a new channel called The Dream Bros. We're going to move all the videos you and I have done over together to this new channel and start building this new channel. And
Wonderful.
yeah,
Fun, Bill. I like how it's evolving,
me
whatever
too.
it is.
The it.
The it. Okay, this has been fun. Certainly questions, comments, suggestions for other topics. We've got endless topics, but specifically questions.
We love
Um,
questions.
questions are great. They help guide us to know, um, yeah, which direction we could be going better in. Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Great to
Cheers.
be with you all.
Yep. Likewise.